Hello everybody, I am Seiffert-Brockmann. I am a professor of business communication at the Department of Business Communication at the Vienna University of Economics and Business in Austria, where I am also the program director of our master's program in, surprise, business communication. Furthermore, I am one of the co-conveners of the EUPRERA PhD workshop, which is directly connected to the topic I want to talk about today. But before I jump into my research, I would like to say that EUPRERA really has been like an academic family to me since I attended my first EUPRERA conference back in 2010 in Jyväskylä, Finland, and I am proud of having been part of this family ever since. Thus, I am grateful for having the opportunity to tell you now a little bit about my research. I mentioned at the beginning that I am engaged in EUPRERA's annual PhD workshop. Our field of study, whether you want to call it public relations, strategic communications, communication management, relationship management, or whatever, is a field in constant search of itself. We, as a community of researchers, are trying to make sense of what we are doing. We want to understand what our object of research really is, in order to determine what it is that we are researching and where we as a field are going in the future. Historically, the great disciplines of the natural sciences eventually settled on a dominant paradigm, which then served as a basis for future research, with alternative paradigms lurking in the margins. You have general relativity and the standard model of particles in physics, or the theory of evolution by natural selection in biology. Just to give you an idea what I'm talking about. Social sciences, however, are inherently more messy, and thus to determine what the state of the art in theory is in a social science is much harder. But nevertheless, we wanted to know where our field is going and how it might progress from there. In our article, Between Progress and Struggle, Young PR Scholars' Contribution to Theory Building and Progress in Public Relations Research, we asked the question, where is the field at this point, and where might it be going? To that end, we turned to the works of young academics, that is their PhD thesis, to see from which authors they get their ideas and theories. To do that, we did a citation analysis of all the students' PhD theses who participated in the EUPRERA PhD workshop between 2007 and 2019. And what we found was that Peter Winkler's, Yannick Kretschmer's, and Michael Etter's paper, Between Tragedy, Romance, Comedy, and Satire, Narratives of Axiological Progress in Public Relations, really gives us an accurate idea of how fragmented our field is. In the works of these young academics, we found largely four paradigms struggling for dominance: the social reflective paradigm, the co-creational paradigm, the critical cultural paradigm, and, the biggest among them, the so-called functional paradigm. While I do not have the time to deep dive into the results here, what we found is this. Young scholars today follow the trends that have characterized our fields for decades now. We are largely referencing ourselves, we don't get much input from the outside. And young scholars engage in a signaling game to position themselves as stalwarts of a certain paradigm. The result is that there is no single dominant paradigm emerging that is really driving research and thus allowing the field to progress in the same way that the natural sciences do. Instead, different factions are forming who compete for dominance. It would seem as if young researchers find it necessary to engage in a Game of Thrones-like endeavor to secure their spot in academia. For this, however, the quote-unquote right axiomatic beliefs are seemingly more important than research results that stand the tests of time. So what the data shows is that while we all are pulling simultaneously, we are pulling into different directions. Unfortunately, there's only so much time in such a format to get my point across. So if you're interested in this topic, we will provide you with the references to the works I briefly touched upon in the show notes. Thank you very much for your attention, and see you at EUPRERA.